The former UN chief in Sudan says he fears the worst for tens of thousands of people living in the Nuba mountain region in the south of the country. Mukesh Kapila says the Sudanese government is carrying out crimes against humanity there, torching villages, destroying crops and bombing civilians. Well, Sudanese leaders say they are fighting rebels allied to neighboring South Sudan, but human rights groups say the bombing campaign is indiscriminate. Men, women and children have been forced to leave their homes. This boy took refuge in a shelter made of leaves to hide from fighter jets patrolling above. Well, when Sudan split in two last year, it was hoped it would become more peaceful and more stable. But 8 months into the country separating, nothing has happened so far. This is where most of the fighting is taking place, the South Kordofan region, straddling the border between South and Sudan and South Sudan. The two countries are at odds over who owns certain parts of the territory and who should pay for vital oil transit routes. Mukesh Kapila, as we were saying, is the former envoy to Sudan, and he joins us now. Mukesh, thank you very much for being with us. You've been there. You've been to the region of South Kordofan. Tell us, what exactly did you see?
Well, as soon as we went into the Nuba Mountains, I saw burnt-out villages, mile after mile after mile. I saw destroyed food stores. I saw landmines, which I didn't know the Sudan government was using there. I saw cluster bombs and was told that only the day before 2 children had died from picking up these pretty little toys. I saw Antonov bombing. I saw smoke rising as they burned the fields. And to me, it reminded me, it was a step back to when I was UN chief in 2003, 2004. This is a scorched earth policy. And the people showed me, and people were running as the Antonov went overhead, hiding in nooks and crannies and caves and such like. The difference between Darfur then and Nuba now is that the technology of war has advanced. What Khartoum is using now is heavier artillery, more precision targeting, bombing churches and schools where civilians might take refuge when they are up there. And because this is the growing season, maximizing the bombing now means that they will go hungry for the rest of the year.
How much do you, how much faith do you have in talks that are taking place right now in Addis Ababa, where the leaders, granted they're talking about oil, but they have been talking about potential, some sort of peace talks as well. How much faith do you have?
I have no faith at all. Khartoum, Bashir, whose third anniversary of the issuance of his arrest warrant was only a few days ago, and Harun, who is the governor of South Kordofan, who I knew when he was bombing in Darfur all those years ago, basically they're prevaricating. I mean, the point is the humanitarian access is needed now. If it is to make any difference before the rains come, access becomes more difficult, and seeds have to be planted now for the food to come now. So the more Khartoum prevaricates, the greater the humanitarian impact of what is now a protection and security crisis.
The situation in Darfur was labeled as potentially the worst humanitarian crisis. Yeah. And the situation that you're saying right now in the Nuba Mountains is potentially worse than what you saw there. Who do you hold responsible? Do you hold the governments of Sudan and South Sudan responsible, or do you hold the international community responsible for not paying much attention?
Well, of course, the primary responsibility must lie with those who are perpetrating. Of course, is Khartoum responsible? Who else has Antonov bombers? Who else has heavy artillery? Who else has the means to target deliberately villages where people live? Who else puts mines around schools and water wells? Who else does arbitrary detentions and summary executions, reports of which are now coming out, including through UN reports which have not seen the light of day? Who else but Khartoum? So as far as the international community is concerned, they're simply paralyzed. The Security Council issues a statement yesterday, which is welcome, but it says not a word.
Where's the paralysis coming from, though?
Well, because of a lack of consistency in what the different powers on the Security Council want out of all this.
I.e. Russia and China?
I see Russia, China, and even the Western powers, I think, are prevaricating. And Khartoum is very good. And you look what's in Sudan. We have a separate UN mission for Darfur, a separate one for Abyei, one in the south. And I don't know if they're talking to each other, but one thing is for sure, Khartoum, I know from experience, is adept at dividing and ruling the international community. And to do continued normal business with Khartoum, while it's headed by a mass murderer who's wanted by the International Criminal Court, is a disgrace and a travesty. So how come we are now acting on Syria and we're saying that Saddam is not a legitimate leader, Assad is not a legitimate leader, and yet the world behaves as if Khartoum is a normal government, Sudan is a normal country, and you can do normal business, including arms trade, including economic relationship. This is a disgrace. And those countries which are selling arms to Khartoum, and those countries who are allowing this to happen, they must take their own responsibility for aiding and abetting what is going on. And therefore, the responsibility for this is with Khartoum. There are questions about that, but those who stand by and do nothing will be found guilty of whatever I said in Darfur, which came true. And this is the second genocide, possibly of the 21st century, where Darfur was the first. And unfortunately, both are in the Sudan.
Mukesh Kapila, we thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.